I never imagined betrayal could feel this personal. My wife Lisa and I had been together for 5 years. We weren't perfect, no couple is, but I thought our relationship was built on trust and mutual respect. I had this picture in my head of us as partners, tackling life's challenges together. I had no idea how wrong I was. The first cracks in that picture started small, almost unnoticeable. Lisa began to act differently, distant, distracted. She was always on her phone, smiling at messages she wouldn't share. She started staying out late, using vague excuses that didn't make sense. At first, I told myself I was overthinking. Relationships go through phases, right? People get busy. But the uneasy feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. I started paying closer attention, noticing things I couldn't ignore. A sudden interest in looking her best whenever she left the house, whispered phone calls in the other room, and a coldness between us that hadn't been there before. The intimacy we once had felt like a distant memory. I decided to confront her when I couldn't shake the suspicion anymore. It wasn't just paranoia, I needed answers. She denied everything at first, of course, calling me insecure and jealous. For a moment, I almost believed her. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. My suspicions were confirmed when I came across undeniable proof messages on her phone that revealed everything. The words were like a dagger to the heart, but it wasn't just the affair that shattered me. It was who she was with, my own brother Don. The betrayal hit me in waves. Lisa, the woman I loved and trusted, and Don, my brother, the person I grew up with, shared memories with, and considered my closest ally. How could they do this to me? How could they look me in the eye and pretend nothing was happening? To make things worse, Lisa dropped a bombshell that sent me reeling. She was pregnant. And it wasn't my child, it was Don's. The pain of that realization was unbearable. It wasn't just betrayal, it felt like they had taken something irreplaceable from me. In that moment, my world crumbled. Everything I thought I knew about love, family, and trust was gone, replaced by anger, sadness, and a hollow emptiness I couldn't escape. The fallout was a storm of emotions I wasn't prepared to handle. It was anger, sadness, and disbelief, all crashing over me like relentless waves. I couldn't escape it. Everywhere I turned, I was reminded of what Lisa and Don had done. The betrayal felt so personal, so targeted, that it consumed my thoughts. Lisa tried to justify herself, as if there were any excuse for what she'd done. She said it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. She begged for forgiveness, crying and pleading, but her words rang hollow. How could something so deliberate, so calculated, be called a mistake? And even if it was, how could I ever trust her again? Don's response was even worse. He didn't seem sorry at all. If anything, he acted like I should get over it, like this was something that could be fixed with time and understanding. He had the nerve to talk about family, as if he hadn't just destroyed ours. His arrogance made my blood boil. He wasn't just unapologetic, he seemed almost entitled, like he believed his actions were justified. Lisa decided to keep the baby, and Don stood by her side. The two of them, my wife and my brother, now had a bond that I could never be part of. The thought of them raising a child together, a constant reminder of their betrayal, made me feel physically ill. It was like they were rewriting the story of our lives, and I had no say in it. I felt completely isolated, like a stranger in my own life. The home Lisa and I had built together felt cold and empty, stripped of all the love and trust it once held. Every glance at her, every thought of Don, was a reminder of the lies they'd been living. I couldn't escape it, no matter how hard I tried. The love I had for Lisa was gone, replaced by a hollow ache and a growing resentment. And Don, he wasn't my brother anymore. He was just a man who had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. The two people I trusted most had turned my world upside down, and there was no going back. It was in this dark place that I realized I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them walk away unscathed, acting like their actions had no consequences. Something had to change. Something had to give. Just when I thought the situation couldn't possibly get worse, Don came to me with a request that felt like the final nail in the coffin. He wanted to adopt Lisa's baby. The audacity of it left me speechless. He framed it as an act of responsibility, a way to make things right after all the damage they'd caused. but to me it felt like another slap in the face. Don stood there, explaining his plan like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. He wanted to formalize his role as the father, to step up and take responsibility for the child he had created with my wife. He acted as if this was a noble gesture, as if this would somehow erase the betrayal that had already ripped my life apart. Lisa, of course, stood by him. She looked at me with a mixture of guilt and hope, as if she expected me to support their twisted version of a happy family. They didn't just want forgiveness, they wanted my blessing, my acceptance of the life they'd built at my expense. It was too much. I couldn't believe their boldness. After everything they'd done, they still expected me to play along, to put my pain aside for their convenience. They wanted me to pretend everything was fine, to embrace this bizarre reality where Don was the father of my wife's child, and I was just supposed to be okay with it. The request felt like a mockery of everything I had lost. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore, it was about the complete lack of remorse, the way they acted like their happiness was more important than the devastation they'd left in their wake. I refused. There was no hesitation, no doubt in my mind. I told them I wouldn't support their plan, that I wanted no part in their delusion of a happy ending. My refusal didn't stop them, of course. Don and Lisa were determined to move forward with their lives, with or without my approval. But their audacity lit a fire in me, a fire fueled by anger and a sense of injustice. I couldn't let them walk away from this unscathed. They had taken so much from me, but I wasn't going to let them take my dignity. It was time to act. I knew I couldn't let them get away with what they'd done. Their betrayal had left me broken, but it also gave me clarity. If they thought they could trample over me and build a life on the ruins of my trust, they were wrong. Revenge wasn't about pettiness, it was about justice. I needed to make sure they understood the weight of their actions. The first step was gathering evidence. I spent days digging into every detail of their affair: texts, emails, timelines. I wanted the full picture of how long this betrayal had been happening and just how deep it went. Seeing the truth laid out was painful, but it also gave me power. For so long they had controlled the narrative, but now I had the facts. Next I turned to exposure. I wasn't going to keep their secret for them. Lisa and Don wanted to play happy family, pretending everything was fine, but I made sure the people around us knew the truth. I told our family, our friends, even people at Lisa's workplace about their affair. The scandal hit them hard. Lisa's perfect image crumbled almost instantly. She had always cared so much about how others saw her, and now her reputation was in tatters. Don, too, faced the consequences of being exposed. He was no longer the charismatic, reliable man everyone thought he was. People started to distance themselves from both of them, and they had no one to blame but themselves. But I wasn't done. I knew Don's finances weren't as secure as he liked to pretend. He had debts, investments that weren't as successful as he let on. With some careful planning, I made sure those weaknesses came to light. It didn't take much, just a few nudges in the right direction. Soon, Don found himself in a financial mess he couldn't handle. Watching their lives unravel brought me a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in months. They had thought they could build a new life together, but now that life was crumbling around them. Lisa and Don, once so smug and confident, were struggling to keep their heads above water. It wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. They had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now they were finally paying the price. Watching their lives fall apart brought me a sense of closure I didn't think was possible. Don and Lisa, once so proud and self-assured, now struggled under the weight of their own choices. The life they thought they could build together turned out to be a fragile, crumbling illusion. The baby they had once seen as a new beginning became a constant reminder of the betrayal they had tried to leave behind. Lisa, who had always been so concerned with appearances, couldn't escape the damage to her reputation. People who had admired her before now saw her for who she truly was: a woman capable of destroying a marriage and a family without a second thought. Her social circles vanished, her workplace relationships grew cold, and she was left isolated in a way she had never experienced. Don's life wasn't much better. Financially, he was barely holding it together. The mess I had helped expose left him scrambling to make ends meet. The confident, charismatic brother I had once known was replaced by someone desperate and exhausted, constantly trying to stay afloat. He had traded his integrity and our bond for a relationship that was now filled with strain and regret. As for me, I finally began to feel free. The anger that had consumed me for so long started to fade, replaced by a sense of peace. I had done what I needed to do, not just to get revenge, but to reclaim my dignity and sense of self. I wasn't defined by their betrayal anymore. I made the choice to walk away from their mess entirely. They could keep their toxic relationship and their complicated life. I wanted no part of it. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my own life. It wasn't easy, but every step forward felt like a victory. I surrounded myself with people who truly cared about me, people who respected and valued me. Revenge didn't erase the pain completely, but it gave me back my sense of control. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was someone who had faced the worst and come out stronger on the other side. In the end, the best revenge wasn't their downfall, it was my freedom. Free from their lies, free from their drama, and free to create a future that was entirely my own. And that was the sweetest victory of all.